obviously Garl Samuelson and Nick Menza. And more directly, Nick Menza was the catalyst for this undertaking.
What's up, everybody? It's Keefe from GhostCultMag.com here with guitar legend Jeff Young. How are you doing today, Jeff?
Peace, everybody. I'm bloody well right, my friend. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you as well. Our many fans and staff in the UK will appreciate that bloody well.
I'm a big Supertramp fan from
Yo,
the Crime of the Century album, which takes us way back.
killer. I love that record. I grew up with that record, so that's a great
So
one.
good.
It's so good to see you, Jeff, and talk about this Kings of Thrash project with Ellefson and Chris Poland. It's mind-blowing to have you three guys together to do anything, let alone a string of live performances. This is great.
For us as well, my friend.
I know Ellefson's in like 25 bands, and I know you and Poland both have a multitude of stuff going on. How did you guys form this together and come together with this idea?
Well, the amazing thing, and I see now Metallica's following in our footsteps, and they're doing some kind of a tribute show for some people that they have strong memories about. And likewise, obviously, Garl Samuelson and Nick Menza. And more directly, Nick Menza was the catalyst for this undertaking. There's a documentary in process about Nick's life. Some folks may have heard about it. And the manager had contacted me back maybe December, and they were going to be filming in LA in January and asked me to take part in that because on the road with Megadeth, I ended up rooming with Nick. Although he was the drum tech at the time, we got along great, and I didn't really want to room with some bandmates that were coming in at 2, 3, 4 in the morning, smoking cigarettes, putting them out in the ashtray between the beds. It just wasn't my frequency. So I ended up rooming with one of the roadies, which I think was some kind of serendipitous intervention from the universe. Nick and I became great friends. He'd been on my radio show, Music Without Boundaries, and we'd stayed in touch. We even jammed together at Guitar Institute of Technology, Musicians Institute in Hollywood while I was teaching there several years ago. They had a metal workshop, and all the students had to play a Megadeth tune. Of course, they all learned In My Darkest Hour, which I think we had to play 15, 20 times in a day that day, but it was a blast to see him again. We reconnected, and that led to him being on my show. Chris Poland also was a guest on my show, and those two ended up playing together in a band called Ohm, and of Nick's untimely and the very eerie circumstances surrounding his passing live on stage at the Baked Potato, playing with Chris Poland and Ohm. That doesn't happen often, musicians just leaving us on stage. But so that hit all of us hard, and those who were friends with Nick even deeper. There was going to be some kind of a benefit in his wake, but that never happened. Flash forward all these years later, and the documentary's happening. It's going to be distributed on Ellefson Films. I'm not sure if folks know David has a film company, and they have a really successful first release. It's kind of a Blair Witch found footage style flick called Dwellers. And I know you can get it on Tubi and Amazon Prime, and it's amazing. It's really good. His guitarist in the Lucid is the director, star, and wrote the script. And it's a really cool movie. I was really surprised when I saw it. And David makes a cameo in the beginning, spoiler alert. So I was invited to do this documentary on Nick's life. And the night before, we all met at the Rainbow for a dinner and a team session to kind of go over what we were doing and why we were paying the bill. I kind of remembered a demo that David and I had been working on back prior to Rust in Peace, kind of post So Far So Good So What tour, and before I exited stage left or right, depending on whose story you believe. But I have a pretty good memory for not dates and times, but events. And I remembered two of the memorable riffs out of those two songs we demoed. And I sang them to him at the table. I go, "Hey, you remember this tune?" And he goes, "Dude, I totally remember that riff. It was killer. We got to get in a room and work that up." So the next morning I woke up, and in my robe, with my Dean guitar. I sat with my cell phone, put it right here, leaned it up against my laptop, pointing at me, and I played the full riff that I remember, which was two parts. And when we were on a break from filming, took the liberty to play it for him again, and that was the cherry on top. And we immediately ended up in a room with his drummer engineering, Mike Heller from the Lucid. And we have 4 original songs in process now. The drummer and I, you were just hearing me before we started talk to him, because we're going in the studio Thursday to lay down the rhythm guitar 1 and drums to the first original. And we're doing it to 2-inch tape, analog style, live in a room like real men, right? They used to do. And the studio is a really cool backstory, and I'll give you the nutshell. It's a mom and pop operation nestled in a residential area in North Hollywood. They have Christopher Cross's souped up API mixing board. Remember Christopher Cross? He rode like the wind to the top of the charts and sailed off into the sunset with his millions, right? And Eddie Kramer, who's done a few up and comers over his career, the Beatles, the Stones, all the posthumous Jimi Hendrix recordings and albums have been mixed at this studio. So the great news is that the engineer who we're using as his protege has been mentoring, apprenticing with Eddie Kramer. So for a fraction of the price, my friends, you're going to get the Eddie Kramer tones and analog 2-inch, like in the good old days, for the first Kings of Thrash release. How's that sound?
I'm so excited. I almost knocked my microphone off the desk. That's insane. I'm so stoked. So many things to unpack. First of all, just right off the top, obviously, look, Nick was loved. We love Nick. A huge Nick Menza fan. We had a whole positive interaction with him at NAMM right before he passed. We have some great photos of him clowning around.
He was a funny fucker.
He really was like the best personality of all time in heavy metal. Like such a good dude, such a fun-loving dude, and such a phenomenal drummer. And if anybody, honestly, in my, I still love Megadeth, and I have some Megadeth questions for you later. But, if anybody could cover the Gar and Nick stuff, it's definitely Fred. But let's give a shout out to your drummer Fred, because he's phenomenal. People around.
I have a photograph Fred sent me of him and Nick. He's obviously a huge Nick aficionado. And no, Chris Poland, after the first rehearsals, goes, "You're nailing Gar's parts."
Hard to do, man. Hard to do. Gar had a different
Fred
feel
is
than
a
anybody.
beast. I mean, we really feel in a way that how Ozzy must have felt introducing Randy Rhoads to the world with these 2 young guys we have, both half our age and both so composed and mature musically for their age. And we've just been having a blast. And it's great that they're fans of the music and they've really studied it. Chaz, the singer guitar player, plays in a Megadeth tribute and fronts a Soundgarden tribute. So he has some of that Chris Cornell huskiness. You may have picked that up in the short rehearsal video, our first rehearsal that we put out. So it's really cool to hear him sing these songs with a bit more huskiness and that young exuberance that he has. I think the kids are going to love him because he has that Dimebag Darrell kind of likability.
That's high praise, man. That's high praise. We're down for it. I love that rehearsal footage, and yeah, this is really exciting. So new music from the project, but also these live performances, these 4 shows that are booked. Hopefully, it'll become more. Eventually, we'd love to see it get all over the world and all over the country.
God, every corner of the world's asking. So,
yeah,
inquiring minds want to know. This is kind of the litmus test, the proof of concept, and just going out there and putting it out there, and then we'll take it from there. But I know our agent's been talking every region from Europe to Australia, New Zealand, Japan, Mexico, South America.
That's insane, man. I'm so happy for you guys. And of course, selfishly, I got to pull out my favorite Megadeth record is this one you may be familiar with. I'm not
Really?
sure. My copy and
That's a controversial one.
the controversial one, I know. It's
Well,
actually
more
got it's got a
rock.
parental advisory sticker on the back before they were on the front. I have to share with that says like the lyrics are right here, which is very funny to me, but I still love that record. I actually think it's got still some of the best songs ever for Megadeth and obviously the production unfortunately for a variety of reasons has had well documented issues, but the playing, the performances and the songwriting hard to match even on the other records that people would call out among their favorites. This is still one of my top 3 Megadeth records
A
ever.
little more punk rock vibe on that. And then like the previous two, it was cool to have Steve Jones come in on Anarchy and with a broken arm, he rides his Triumph into the, recording studio loading bay and threw it down. I was like, how's he going to play? But he played. He sure played. So it was a great experience to do that album, and I'm kind of glad that it's a cult underground favorite album. It's going to make this tour all that much cooler because I think a lot of Megadeth fans may have come in later, younger fans, even people who were introduced from Rust in Peace or Countdown Beyond, missed that tour, maybe missed that album, didn't quite get it. I think when they see it this time around, it's going to, for both albums, I think it's going to give people a whole new vantage.
I heard a story, I don't know if it's true or if you can corroborate that Steve's arm actually he had broken his arm and he set it so he could still play guitar. Like, I don't know how. It sounds painful.
Can't recommend enough as long as we're talking about the Godfather. People, you got to check out that series Pistol. It's told from his perspective and it's incredible. I mean, it gave me a whole new lease on music. You tend to get a bit jaded after so many years in the business, but it really reconnected me kind of into that innocence of kind of why we got into it. That garage band mentality we had. I was back in Dayton, Ohio, rehearsing my parents' basement over my buddy's basement. So I highly recommend that movie. And yeah, it's a cool, I love Mary Jane was a great tune and Darkest Hour, of course, the Metal Years movie and all that. So, and it was, I think, probably the first thrash album to crack the Billboard Top 20 when we were out with Dio. So
That's
that was
right.
a cool achievement.
I'm gonna say also, I think obviously, look, the staples of the band get played at every show. But I will say personally, having seen Megadeth a few times in the last few years, I don't think they're playing much from So Far, So Good, So What these days. I
I
don't
hear
think
they
they're
play the same 10 songs over and over. Not much
yeah,
more.
I think that's kind of what we're getting, and they obviously have a new record out, but we'll see what happens with that. But I don't think they're playing. I know Darkest Hour always pops up here and there when they have a longer set, but I think Hook and Mouth doesn't get heard anymore. That's my jam, and Liar and things like that never get heard. So I think for fans who are going to come to these shows, these initial shows that are going to get like the deep cuts you normally don't get from Peace Cells and this
You're going to
record.
get
Yeah,
You're going to get Killing and So Far, So Good, So What in its entirety, both of
right.
them.
It's
Every
crazy.
tune and some surprises for the encore. Maybe an original if we can get it done. No promises because those are like children and they incubate in their own time, but definitely on the case.
Right, and then aside from reconnecting with David, obviously Chris, you guys, your paths, like you said, have crossed and things like that. But like, what's it like? Do you guys, what's it like that chemistry,
Oh,
like
it's
playing together?
awesome. We're just totally guitar geeking out. We're both guitar geeks. We're tone chasers, and our styles work really cool together. Like I'm kind of doing less legato Holsworth stuff. I still do the stuff on So Far, So Good, So What, but emphasizing maybe different aspects of my playing and how Chris has got his bag and our tones complement each other. We're on the same side of the stage, and we were worried about that at first. Like a lot, but when you hear the sounds together, it really works cool.
That's awesome. I'm so excited. I really can't contain myself. This is going to be crazy. I think this is a great treat for fans, but also, like I said, the promise of new original music from this group of people sounds insane to me. So good.
We like it, and we've played they're just demos right now with my guitar and bass and a click track. Soon to have drums, and it'll be a real version of the first song. But the people we've let hear it are really digging it. It's got the vibe Megadeth it's on that playing field, but it's got all of its own stuff and all of our influences and some Soundgarden Tool vibes and maybe the music and melodies.
Nice. Your own solo stuff has always been very eclectic and different, and I appreciate that you didn't want to get pigeonholed as like a shred guy or a metal guy. You always were able to do different things. I encourage people. We'll link all of your stuff in the description as well as the band, so people can find your solo music. And I think it's worth uncovering and revisiting for sure.
Yeah, well, I'm releasing my first all instrumental album. It's called Revolutions, pardon the pun and the double entendre, but 3 songs are already released on Bandcamp. Monsoon, there's sick players on every tune, and I could take up this entire interview bragging about each and every one of them. Monsoon with Brian Tichy, Rick Firabaci, and Tina Guo, the cellist, who's amazing in many movies, video games, played with Joe Bonamassa in his home DVD and a bunch more. But I had her first. And the second tune is In the Flesh, Rick Firabaci back on bass. He's played with a couple up-and-comers, Chick Corea. He's out with Blood, Sweat, and Tears, Billy Cobham, Frank Gambale. I got the latest is Slow Burn. I wanted to mention on In the Flesh, Jeff Totora from Blue Man Group in Las Vegas, good buddy of mine, kind of a Bonham, Terry Bozzio mixture, great player. On the newest track, Slow Burn, which just came out totally cool. It's kind of a drop D. It had kind of an Alice in Chains, like maybe Van Halen, Fair Warning, Zeppelin, the Rain Song, but darker kind of vibe because it's in a weird tuning. It came out so cool, kind of almost like a psychedelic trance blues trip. And in no small part, thanks to the pedal steel player, a lovely lady named Andrea Witt, who plays with Shania Twain. And I actually met her through one of my students at GIT, ended up in a band with her, and he was sending me his videos, and I kept her on my radar because my first instrument was viola, and that's her first instrument. And when I saw she ended up as the fiddle player for Shania Twain, I was like, oh, that's cool. But when I saw she picked up, just on the spur of the moment, pedal steel and became a virtuoso at it seemingly overnight, I couldn't resist. So, and the way she plays it, if you've heard it, is very cool with effects and echo, and it's very trippy. And I'm really stoked that I brought that into that tune. So it's a good play between like electric guitar and pedal steel guitar, which I think is a cool interplay. On bass on that tune, none other than James Lamenzo, my friends. And I think arguably one of his most beautiful melodic bass lines. He just played beautifully on that. And on drums on Slow Burn, Jeff Bowders. Jeff Bowders, ladies and gentlemen, well known from his exploits with Paul Gilbert and Joe Satriani, Shakira, Justin Derrico from Pink, and more. So those 3 are out, and I'm working on a 4th one called Wave Rider with guest guitarist Joe Hoekstra trading leads with me.
No big deal. Just some of the greats in the whole world on your music. That's amazing, and they're playing with you also. So
we care so much about you guys. Special delivery just now from Strymon.
Oh, nice.
We don't want to have any grounding problems or buzz or hum at the live shows. And if you can believe it, in this little box, look at that.
That's beauty. That's a beauty. I love the color.
Candles, all your 9-volt, 24, 18-volt. So,
all right. And that means you'll get your rehearsal in. Yes.
Yeah, man.
We'll wrap it up soon, and I'll give you your day back. You've been fantastic. I appreciate you. Of course, like I said, this is such a treat. People are gonna, I think, Chris has his own fan base and following. David obviously has a legion of fans, and I think this group is going to be very special.
Now I'm getting back out there.
Right, yeah, of course, as you should be. I mean, you've never been away from music. I think that's a misconception maybe people have. You've always been teaching and writing and working. So I think
they might have missed that #1 Brazilian album, World Fusion album that I wrote, produced, toured on for Polygram, Verve Records.
Right on.
And it's called Badi Assagi, Badiassad Chameleon. And I also have we didn't mention my Equilibrium solo album that was kind of on the heels of that, which is kind of a world fusion rock. And Baji and a ton of other cool people on that album as well. Great musicians.
Yeah, that's the one that I know actually the best, actually, of all the more recent stuff.
That drummer, though, Matt Chamberlain, he was the last drummer with Soundgarden, not Matt Cameron. Matt Chamberlain, who also did like 6, 7 albums with Tori Amos, who I love dearly, and Fiona Apple's first 2 albums he was on. And I think, remember Edie Brickell and the New Bohemians? That was his first gig when he was 16 years old, before he went
Nice.
on Saturday Night Live to be in the house band. And if you Google his discography, it's incredible.
That's wild. It sounds like you
Great guy, and that's why he's played with so many people, including me. One of
nice.
the best drummers on the planet, just sick.
Amazing. It sounds like you have a very eclectic listening taste, not just, I know people know you from some of your more bigger ticket projects, but like it sounds like you just in general listen to a wide variety of music.
When you grew up in the 70s listening to radio, even when there was only AM and then later FM came in strong, you heard such an eclectic mix of artists and so much great songwriting in the 70s, from pop to rock. And I grew up in Dayton, Ohio, where the Ohio Players came from, to funk. And I don't know if people know, Ohio, Dayton, Cincinnati is a like the hotbed of funk, where a lot of those bands originated from. And it was really the Ohio Players that gave us Dayton folk the permission, I guess you could say, like, they can end up on Soul Train and American Bandstand. I guess I could give it a go. So I've always loved funk. You can take that to the bank.
Nice, nice.
And actually, there was a bunch of funk influence on the first Killing Is My Business. You listen to the title track, maybe Skull Beneath the Skin verse, kind of funky.
Right on. I don't doubt it. Out of curiosity, just as we start to wrap this up and I give you back your day, have you followed? I'm sure after you parted from the band, there was acrimony. I wouldn't blame you if you were mad or bitter, and you don't seem to be. But did you continue to follow Megadeth? Have you continued to follow metal or thrash metal through the years, or are you just kind of like I'm moving on to other stuff?
Can I quote Andy Summers from The Police here? I read an interview and he summed it up really well. It's like when you get to a certain point of musicianship and you can play pretty much anything that you want, it may take you longer to play this, master a classical piece, than a Rolling Stones tune. But I went on to stuff that was more complex to play than that. I'm not trying to put it down or anything, but I got more into classical and flamenco. I actually stopped playing electric guitar for a decade, didn't play with a pick. I was doing only fingerstyle. And no, I heard a few things on Rust in Peace because we'd been rehearsing Holy Wars and Polaris on tour. So those were already worked up without the vocals. And I checked that album out, but I wasn't that interested because, it's like checking out what your ex is doing. And there's a few metal bands that I dig. Like I love the King Diamond Them album. And I mean, I could go on, but I like Pantera mostly for Dimebag. And I do like Phil's voice, but when the Cookie Monster vocals come in, I'm out. I got to have some melody there. But, I got into bands like Alice in Chains and Soundgarden, those heavy bands. And, once I went into the world music, I kind of went out of that for a while. But if it's in you, it's in you. And it's like the mafia. Once you're in, you're never out. So, and I realized, after doing flamenco and classical stuff, it was really two things. I know it's like you got to know where your bread's buttered and what people really want from you. You can't be selfish, and people know me from Megadeth, and it doesn't matter. I did a #1 Brazilian album. It didn't get as much play in America because the label was being bought out by Seagram's Whiskey and became Universal Music, and a long story. So most people know me from that. And I went back into playing electric guitar. I kept getting offers from people, hey, come do this gig, sit in with us here. And to be honest, so that was part of it. Then the other side of the coin was, classical and flamenco guitar are very delicate, soft instrument. It's more like a parlor instrument. It's not made for arenas or even in like a big auditorium. It's hard to hear and it's hard to amplify. A good acoustic sound to get it live is very hard. And end of the day, the world is so noisy right now
So
that
true,
I
man.
think for people to even hear you above all the commotion, maybe a classical or flamenco guitar isn't loud enough these days.
I gotta give it up to Rodrigo y Gabriela for like generating a lot of interest in that genre, and they're huge metalheads, and they do a lot of metal covers,
I
including
love them. Yeah, I play
Megadeth.
them on my show all the time on my radio show.
Yeah, they're phenomenal. They're on my bucket list. You were also, so I'm so glad we got to chat today. You never went away, so I can't say welcome back. You've always been around. I just think this is gonna be just so awesome for Megadeth fans and in general fans of yours and Chris's and David's. And I'm very excited about this new original music. Jeff, I hope we do it again soon. I can't wait to see you play these gigs. I hope you do more gigs in California and the rest of the country.
Yeah, there'll
And
be
it's
video for those who can't make it, I'm sure. And I know we're taping second show in Arizona, possible release of tracks on something or video. I don't know if there's going to be pro video, but for sure we're doing audio.
awesome. We're here for it. Thank you so much for hanging out with Ghost Cult, Jeff. I really appreciate it.
Pleasure, people.